The mahogany-lined boardroom of Phoenix Global buzzed with the usual pre-meeting chatter. 14 board members in bespoke suits traded knowing looks and corporate platitudes while I sat quietly at the far end, dressed in what they probably considered entry-level attire. "I still don't understand why we had to include her," Richard Blackwood, the CEO, muttered to his right-hand man. "Some junior analyst from accounting shouldn't be sitting in on board meetings." If only he knew that junior analyst Chen owned 67% of Phoenix Global through a complex web of shell companies and silent investments. But that revelation would come soon enough. "Protocol, sir," his assistant whispered back. "The Employee Representation Initiative requires one lower-level staff member at quarterly meetings." I hid my smile behind my laptop screen, remembering how I'd orchestrated that initiative through several proxy board members. It had taken 3 years of careful maneuvering to reach this moment, building my ownership stake while maintaining my cover in the accounting department. "Well, let's get this over with," Richard announced, calling the meeting to order. First item, the proposed merger with Turner Industries. I watched him preen as he outlined the deal, a merger that would allegedly save Phoenix Global from its declining market position. What Richard didn't know was that Turner Industries was a paper tiger, its apparent success engineered by my team to create this exact scenario. "The numbers are clear," Richard continued, shooting me a condescending glance. "Though perhaps we should explain them slowly for our junior colleagues' benefit." The board members chuckled dutifully. I opened my leather portfolio, the only genuine luxury item I'd allowed myself to display, and pulled out my prepared notes. "Actually," I spoke up, keeping my voice deliberately modest, "I had a few questions about the merger financials." Richard's smile turned patronizing. "Miss Chen, while we appreciate the enthusiasm of our junior staff, these matters are rather complex." "Complex like the $50 million discrepancy in Turner's Q3 earnings report?" I asked innocently. "Or complex like their shell company in the Cayman Islands?" The room went silent. Richard's face flushed red as he glanced at his CFO, who suddenly seemed very interested in his tablet. "I don't know what you think you've found," Richard began, his voice tight, "but you're clearly out of your depth. Perhaps we should review your qualifications to even be in this meeting." "Excellent suggestion," I said, pulling out a stack of documents. "Let's start with my credentials." "Your resume won't be necessary," Richard snapped. "Security can escort you out." "Oh, this isn't my resume," I smiled, sliding the papers across the polished table. "These are my ownership documents. Specifically, the ones showing that I control 67% of Phoenix Global's voting shares." The blood drained from Richard's face as he snatched up the papers. Around the table, board members began frantically checking their phones, watching Phoenix Global's stock tick upward as my ownership position was revealed to the market. "This is impossible," Richard whispered. "You're just a what?" I asked quietly. "Just an analyst? Just a woman? Just someone you've been underestimating for 3 years while I built a controlling stake in your company." The CFO was the first to recover. "The shell companies, the silent investments, it was you all along?" I nodded, finally dropping the modest demeanor I'd cultivated so carefully. "While you were all focused on corner offices and executive perks, I was focused on something more important. Actual corporate governance." But your clothes," one board member sputtered. "Your position. Were carefully chosen to make you underestimate me," I confirmed, standing up. "It's amazing how invisible you can be when people think you're just another junior employee." My phone buzzed. A message from my real executive team waiting in the wings. "Media briefing ready when you are. Turner Industries stock already dropping." "Now," I continued, moving to the head of the table, Richard's spot, "shall we discuss the real state of this company? Starting with why the Turner merger was a trap designed to expose incompetent leadership." Richard stood up, his face mottled with rage. "You can't just walk in here and—" "I can," I cut him off. "And I have. Check your email. You'll find your termination papers were filed an hour ago. Don't worry about clearing out your office. Security already has." The boardroom erupted in chaos as members frantically checked their phones, watching their carefully constructed world crumble in real time. Years of country club deals and golf course handshakes meant nothing against cold, hard ownership documents. I sat down in Richard's chair, enjoying how wrong it felt to him, how right it felt to me. Now, about those complex financial matters you thought I wouldn't understand. The real show was just beginning. The aftermath of my revelation unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance. I remained seated in the CEO's chair, my chair now, watching the board members cycle through stages of denial, anger, and desperate negotiation. Security. Richard shouted again, his face almost purple. Remove this. Your security clearance has been revoked, I informed him calmly, pressing a button on my phone. The boardroom doors opened to reveal my own security team, led by Marcus, who'd been quietly working as a janitor for the past year while coordinating our takeover operation. Miss Chen, Marcus nodded professionally, the transition team is in position. Mr. Blackwood's office has been secured. Richard collapsed back into his chair, his expensive suit suddenly looking wrinkled and small. When did you plan this? I finished for him, opening my laptop to display a complex network of ownership diagrams. Remember 2 years ago when you dismissed my proposal about modernizing our investment strategy? You said, and I quote, "Stick to basic accounting, dear. Leave the real business to those who understand it." The CFO, Michael Parker, was frantically swiping through his tablet. The shell companies, they all lead back to. But the board approved those investments. Yes, I smiled, because you never bothered to look beyond the surface. Too busy with your golf games and yacht parties to notice that each approved investment was another piece of my puzzle. My phone buzzed continuously with notifications as the news spread through the financial world. Unknown analyst revealed as Phoenix Global's majority owner, Wall Street Journal. Corporate takeover of the year, Financial Times. This is illegal, Richard sputtered. The SEC has already received full documentation of my ownership position. I cut him off. Along with some interesting files about your personal trading activities. Those conversations you had in the executive bathroom? Not as private as you thought. Several board members visibly paled. Marcus stepped forward, distributing tablets to each person. Your termination packages, he explained, including comprehensive NDAs and the evidence we've gathered about various improprieties. Evidence? Board member James Whitney's voice cracked. What evidence? I pressed another button on my laptop, and the boardroom screens lit up with emails, photos, and financial records. Amazing what people say when they think the cleaning staff can't understand English, I commented. Marcus has been quite thorough in his documentation. The room fell silent except for the sound of panicked breathing and the occasional ping of phones as more news alerts rolled in. Phoenix Global's stock was soaring as the market realized the company's leadership was about to be completely overhauled. The Turner merger, Richard said suddenly. You set us up. I created an opportunity, I corrected. One that exposed exactly how superficial your due diligence was. Did anyone actually read the financials, or were you all too busy planning which country club would host the merger celebration? Catherine Winters, the only other woman on the board, spoke up. Why maintain the cover? Why work in accounting when you own the company? I turned to her, remembering how she'd once advised me to dress more professionally if I wanted to be taken seriously. Because true power isn't about corner offices or designer suits. It's about understanding every level of your business, something none of you ever bothered to do. My phone buzzed again, a message from my real executive team. Press conference in 30 minutes. Turner Industries CEO requesting emergency meeting. Now, I stood up, smoothing down my deliberately modest blazer. You'll find your severance packages are quite generous, provided you sign the NDAs immediately. Those who choose not to. I gestured to the screens still displaying their various indiscretions, might find their retirement years less comfortable. Richard made one last attempt to salvage his dignity. The shareholders won't stand for this. The other investors are thrilled, I interrupted, pulling up real-time market data. Phoenix Global stock is up 30% since my ownership was revealed. Turns out the market appreciates leadership that understands modern business practices. I nodded to Marcus, who began escorting shell-shocked board members out of the room. Their designer shoes squeaked against the marble floors they'd never walk again. Oh, and Richard? I called out as he reached the door. Remember last month when you told me I needed more experience to understand corporate strategy? Consider this your final lesson in underestimating the quiet ones. The boardroom emptied, leaving me alone with the empire I'd built while they were busy playing corporate politics. On the screens, financial networks were still trying to piece together how a junior analyst had orchestrated one of the biggest corporate takeovers in recent history. Sometimes the best power play isn't about who shouts the loudest. It's about who watches the quietest, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal their true position. The revolution in corporate governance was about to begin, and my former board had front-row seats to their own obsolescence. Let the real business begin. The hours following my boardroom revelation transformed Phoenix Global's headquarters into a storm center of corporate upheaval. I remained in my new office, formerly Richard's palatial corner suite, watching multiple screens as the business world tried to process what had just happened. Miss Chen, Marcus appeared with another update. Richard Blackwood is giving an interesting interview to CNBC from the building lobby. Would you like to see the feed? I nodded, and the main screen filled with Richard's increasingly desperate attempts to save face. This is a hostile takeover, he was saying, his perfectly knotted tie now askew. Miss Chen doesn't understand the complexities. You mean the complexities of the Turner merger? I murmured to myself, pulling up the real numbers on my laptop. The one that would have bankrupted us within 6 months. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the revelation. From board members, please reconsider our positions. From Richard, you're making a terrible mistake. I built this company. From various investment banks, interested in discussing future opportunities. I forwarded most to my legal team, except for one, from my former supervisor in accounting. I always wondered why you seemed too smart for your position. Show them what real leadership looks like. The security feeds showed former board members being escorted from their offices, their personal belongings already boxed and labeled. In the executive parking garage, their reserved spots were being reassigned, luxury cars moved to visitor parking. The press conference is in 10 minutes, Marcus reported. And Turner Industries CEO is having what appears to be a breakdown on Twitter. Something about impossible algorithms and hidden analysis. I smiled, remembering the countless nights I'd spent developing those algorithms while my colleagues assumed I was just working late to impress management. Make sure he receives our detailed analysis of Turner's actual financial position. He should understand exactly why his company was the perfect bait. The markets were responding exactly as I'd predicted. Phoenix Global stock had surged another 15% as investors recognized the value of leadership that understood modern business practices. Turner Industries, meanwhile, was watching its carefully constructed facade crumble under genuine scrutiny. Ms. Chen, my new assistant, appeared, not the smooth-talking MBA Richard had employed, but a sharp-minded data analyst I'd worked with in accounting. Your new executive team is assembled in the conference room, and the remaining employees are gathered in the atrium for your address. I stood up, finally allowing myself to shed the last vestiges of my careful disguise. The modest blazer came off, revealing a power suit that cost more than Richard's monthly salary. The practical low heels were replaced by Louboutins I'd kept hidden in my desk drawer. One more thing, Marcus added with a slight smirk. Richard's wife just called. Apparently they're having trouble with their country club membership. Something about it being tied to his position as CEO. Send them the list of public golf courses, I replied, gathering my materials. I hear they're less strict about membership requirements. The walk to the conference room felt different now. No more hiding in corners, no more playing the invisible analyst. Employees who'd previously ignored me now stood at attention, their expressions a mix of fear and fascination. In the conference room, my real executive team waited. A diverse group of brilliant minds I'd quietly recruited over the years. Former junior employees who, like me, had been underestimated and overlooked. The transformation plan is ready, my new CFO, formerly a mere risk analyst, reported. Would you like to review the details before the press conference? I nodded, taking my place at the head of the table. On the screens behind me, financial networks were still running headlines about the takeover, interspersed with footage of shell-shocked board members trying to explain how they'd missed the signs. One last thing, Marcus said quietly. Richard's trying to access his executive files remotely. Should we let him see what we found? No need, I replied, pulling up the comprehensive audit we'd prepared. He'll learn about his creative accounting practices when the SEC does. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating a company on the brink of transformation. On my desk, a small frame held my first company ID badge, Emma Chen, Junior Analyst. A reminder of how far I'd come and how completely they'd underestimated me. My phone buzzed with a message from the board's attorney. This isn't over. The old guard won't stand for this. I smiled, thinking about the documents my team was preparing to release. Evidence of every backroom deal, every manipulated number, every instance of corporate misconduct they'd thought would never come to light. Marcus, I called out, make sure everyone in the atrium can see the screens clearly. It's time they understood what real corporate leadership looks like. Standing up, I gathered my materials and headed for the press conference. Behind me, the empire I'd built while they weren't watching prepared to show the world what happens when you judge leadership by appearance rather than ability. Sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't quiet because they're weak. They're quiet because they're watching, learning, and planning a revolution. Welcome to the new Phoenix Global. Experience required, arrogance optional.